Enough of the theory, let's get started with MongoDB now. And a good place to get started is here, mongodb.com. Here you have two options to work with MongoDB. One option would be to go to software and then select the community server. This would allow you to download MongoDB locally to your machine if you click onto this option here. Then you should select the community server, select your operating system, macOS in my case, and then you can simply download it by clicking onto this button. This is one option, so to install it on your machine, we'll use a different solution though. And you can find this solution actually right here if you go to Get Started for free, or you can go to Cloud and Atlas. MongoDB Atlas is a fully managed cloud service hosting your MongoDB database. And the great thing is that the basic version of it can be used for free. And this version is totally sufficient for the purpose of this course. For larger scale applications, you might have to select the paid version though, but well, that's of course depending on the application type you want to use. But for the course, this is perfect. So what you can do then is you can click right here on Start Free. And now you should enter your email, first name, last name, and a password, and then you can click right here to, well, sign into MongoDB Atlas, or as I do have an account already, I'll simply select login right here or sign in right there. So you have plenty of options actually. And then you should see this starting screen right here. You can create new projects in this menu. I'm here in this refresher project, but if you start MongoDB Atlas the first time, this is what you can see here. And the first thing you have to do is you have to create a so-called cluster. The cluster is basically your server in the cloud running your MongoDB database. It's called a cluster because it could contain multiple servers to allow horizontal scaling, but this is not part of the free version and also not required for the course. Therefore, we can click Build a Cluster. Now select the Starter cluster. You can see here it's for free, that's the important thing. You don't have some more advanced options, but I guess it's totally fine. So click on to create a cluster here. And now you can select the cloud provider. We'll go with AWS here. And then you only have to select, well, all services with the free tier available hint here. So we will use the server in North America, North Virginia. You can select the cluster tier, but also important here, free forever. That doesn't sound too bad, I would say. We don't need a backup, so this is also fine, and you can define a cluster name. We'll stick to cluster 0 here, and then we can click Create Cluster. And with that, we are done with the first step. As you can see, this might take a few minutes, but then this cluster is created, and with that, we can run our MongoDB database. There are two more things we have to do though, because at the moment we only have this server, but we need to access it. And to get access to the server, we need to work on the security settings. You can find these settings right here in the left part of the screen. And let's first go to network access here. Here you have to whitelist an IP address. This means you have to specify which machine, which computer, or which server in the end is allowed to interact with the database. Here I'm working with a local development environment, therefore I have to add my IP address right here. You have to add your IP address, of course. So click on to add IP address, and now you can simply select add current IP address. You can also allow access from anywhere. That's not what I want here. I'll stick to my current IP address. And very important, the IP address might change from time to time. Therefore, in case you don't have data access after a while, make sure to check your IP address again and to update this IP whitelist here. So now you can confirm this. And also very important, as I said at the moment, this IP address is the IP from my local machine. Once you deploy an application to a real server in the internet, you should provide the IP of this server, of course. Important is always that the interaction between your backend and the database is set up correctly. This can take a while, but now my network access is active, so my machine can interact with the database, but there is another thing we have to configure, and this is the database access, meaning that we need to create a user with corresponding user credentials, which is then allowed to access the database. So we go to database access, and now create a new user here. For the authentication, we'll use password, and you should select a user with either the admin privileges or, in our case, read and write to any database is also sufficient. So we'll go with this one. Let's give the user name and menu, so that is my name. And you can now either manually create a password or auto-generate a secure password. I can show you this one right here. Of course, these credentials are no longer valid at the time when you're watching this course, so it doesn't make sense to copy-paste these. And now we can hit add user. And with that, we are actually done. It just takes a few more seconds. As you can see, some changes are still deployed. But if we go back to our cluster, yeah, as you can see, it still takes a few seconds. So let's wait until this process is finished. And now it's done. So with that, we have a working MongoDB cluster with the right access and a configured user. What's missing now, of course, is, well, a backend which allows us to interact with that database. This will also help us to understand this cluster, database, collections, and document structure I was referring to earlier in this module. Therefore, in the next lecture, it's time to set up a really basic backend, which will then allow us to connect with this database.